on a few things that were said today, and one of the things was really that we had to rush decisions without really having the time to reflect on their implications, and we don't have yet probably the sort of opportunity to step back and really assess to what extent there will be a lot of unintended consequences. And at the same time, in a way, we hear a lot that our lives have been put in standstill. They've been put on hold because we haven't been able to have all those human-to-human interactions that as human beings we need to move on as well. So what are your views on that, and how can we sort of manage those tensions, and what kind of mechanisms, what kind of instruments can we use, and how can we in a way innovate for ourselves as individuals, but also collectively to be able to address that and again hope to build a better society. Alex, maybe first.
A lot has to do with education, and I think we need to start to teach again our kids. And I have two boys in puberty age, interpersonal skills, critical thinking as well, the debate, and accepting different views as well, and talk to each other. And then we have, and that's one of my big hobbies as well, I think schools should really start to teach responsible use of money as well. And it's not just about giving I think it's now dropped, the Commonwealth Bank piggy bank program. I think that got finally dropped, but really I think it has to do with what we teach. A lot of parents have hard work, etc. They don't really have time anymore, but I think schools need to take some of these points on board, including further education and unis as well, because some of these topics I'm lecturing myself at Swinburne Uni in finance, and at the Swiss Uni as well, and I always try to make this bridge for the students, and I'm surprised today that young smart people don't have this connection anymore, between what's happening out there. And because finance, that's not a discipline by itself. It needs to be connected of human actions and what we are doing. It's about decisions and what's basically. It's very often treated completely decoupled, and I think critical thinking. I know it's a fashion word, but we practice it by far less than we say, I think. And social media probably plays its role as well, and media manipulation as well, wherever it comes from. We just need to be aware. The old-fashioned stuff you learn from your grandparents and your parents.
That's a nice message of hope.
I agree with Alex that wider education on a wide variety of things would be good. I mean, if I look at the decisions politicians made regarding technology, it's a frequent daydream of mine that we could just send them all back to school to learn about technology for 6 months, and then maybe come back to making some of those influential decisions. At the same time, none of us can be an expert in everything. It's just not possible. While these sort of T-shaped skills are much talked about, so you have deep expertise in one area, but you're also across a number of different domains on the superficial level, or slightly more than superficial. Those are well welcome, but we also need collaboration, and I think we do need to restore some trust in expertise. So we need to be able to defer to the experts when that's warranted, as individuals as well as societies and governments.
That's also a very strong message, and I'm sure Jan will use very selectively what was said. Duncan?
Yeah. I guess just to build on that point, because I agree completely that critical thinking is an important, if not the most important skill the next generation is going to need to have, right? And I've given quite a number of guest lectures at RMIT and Swinburne on various kind of fintech topics, and a question that tends to come up at the end is always, if you could give one piece of advice to graduates or people entering the workforce, what would it be? And the comment I always make is the ability to critically think and the ability to learn things, right? It's not just learning things, it's the ability to learn new things. And that's probably going to be the most important skill set for the upcoming generation. And respectfully, I know I'm probably a bit younger than most of the other panelists, so I think it's fair to say that the ability to not just learn from previous generations, to Alexander's point, but also to be able to critically analyze what you learn from previous generations is going to be the most important thing, right? We've spoken about some of these like capitalist potholes we're kind of facing, right? And that's because the generations before us have ingrained that mindset and thinking into the up and coming generations in the current workforce, right? And perhaps it's time to start challenging that way of thinking and that way of living, I guess, to Andrew's point around combining, not-for-profit and profit organizations to try and blend the mentality a little bit so we don't end up with these kind of cliff faces again.
So I want to touch on that critical thinking point. And I don't disagree with that. Critical thinking is absolutely a crucial skill to have. I just fear that a lot of times it comes across as an exhortation like that you need to think critically, do your own research, don't just take for granted what people tell you. And I agree with that, but critical thinking as a skill is not a simple matter. Just telling people to think for themselves without equipping them with tools to do the research, to actually think critically in a correct manner, is counterproductive. You end up with a crippled epistemology where people think they're doing research and they're not. They're incapable of doing research. So I think it's important for us to realize that at the same time, when we emphasize the need to be able to think critically, we need to give people the tools and the expertise and the knowledge on how to exactly do that.
Yes, I think I'll agree with all of that, except maybe that age is only a perception. We're not that much older than you are. Andrew, final words.
My final words, just Duncan, why do you think I'm older than you? I mean, I can't understand. As a student of the Frankfurt School, if any of you know about critical thinking and critical theory, I'm really pleased to hear people saying we need to think more critically. Why are things the way they are and whose interests does it serve are probably two of the key questions we need to ask. Unfortunately, as Sammy has said, what we've discovered is that there is the issue that we have is that people can ask those questions and go to the wrong places to find the answers, if I can put it that way. And that's where populism and a whole range of things come in, and then the new world we live in with social media. So we need critical thinking and we need to ask those questions. And then we also need to somehow, as Sammy has said, reverse the anti-expert, the anti- thinking thing that's going on around in many parts of the Western world, and actually start to respect where value comes from, valued education and thinking comes from. And that's very difficult because there are a lot of people that feel they've lost in the current environment of globalization and a lot of other things. So they're looking for quick answers to big questions. Somehow we need to change that. And right now, I probably don't have an immediate global solution. So I'll just have to say, I think it's a challenge we face.
It's something we'll be building along the way together.